She met shoulder straps one day when she was young yet. He promised her, and she promised him. But he went away. One of the long wars between two short wars took him. In a faraway country then he married another girl, and he didn't come back to Deep Red Roses. Next came High, High Over one day when she was young yet. A dancer he was, going from one city to another city to dance, spending his afternoons and evenings and late nights dancing and sleeping in the morning till noon. And when he promised, she promised. But he went away to another city, and after that another city. And he married one woman and then another woman. Every year there came a new story about one of the new wives of High, High Over, the dancer. And while she was young yet, Deep Red Roses forgot all about her promise and the promise of High, High Over, the dancer who ran away from her. 6 Bits was the next to come along. And he was not a soldier, nor a dancer, nor anything special. He was a careless man, changing from one job to another, changing from paper hanging to plastering, from fixing shingle roofs where the shingles were ripped to opening cans with can openers. 6 Bits gave Deep Red Roses his promise, and she gave him her promise. But he was always late keeping his promise. When the wedding was to be Tuesday, he didn't come till Wednesday. If it was Friday, he came Saturday, and there wasn't any wedding. So Deep Red Roses said to herself, I am going away and learn. I am going away and talk with the wives of High, High Over, the dancer. And maybe if I go far enough, I will find the wife of Shoulder Straps, the soldier. And maybe the wives of the men who promised me will tell me how to keep promises kept. She packed her baggage till her baggage was packed so full there was room for only one more thing. So she had to decide whether to put a clock or whether to put a looking-glass in her baggage. My head tells me to carry the clock so I can always tell if I am early or late, she said to herself. But my heart tells me to carry a looking-glass so I can look at my face and tell if I am getting older or younger. At last she decides to take the clock and leave the looking-glass. Because her head says so, she starts away. She goes through the door, she is out of the house, she goes to the street, she starts up the street. Then her heart tells her to go back and change the clock for the looking-glass. She goes back up the street, through the door, into the house, into her room. Now she stands in front of the clock and the looking-glass, saying, Tonight I sleep home here one more night, and tomorrow morning I decide again. And now, every morning, Deep Red Roses decides with her head to take the clock. She takes the clock and starts away, and then comes back because her heart decides she must have the looking-glass. If you go to her house this morning, you will see her standing in the doorway with blue skylights like the blue sky of early April in her eyes, and lips that remind you of deep red roses in the cool of the evening in summer. You will see her leave the doorway and go out of the gate with the clock in her hands. Then if you wait, you will see her come back through the gate, into the door, back to her room where she puts down the clock and takes up the looking-glass. After that, she decides to wait until tomorrow morning to decide again what to decide. Her head tells her one thing, her heart tells her another. Between the two, she stays home. Sometimes she looks at her face in the looking-glass and says to herself, I am young yet, and while I am young I am going to do my own deciding. Blixie Bimber fingered the end of her chin with her little finger and said, It is a strange story. It has a stab in it. It would hurt me if I couldn't look up at the big white clouds shouldering their shoulders, rolling on the rollers of the big blue sky. It is a good story to tell when April is here all over again. And I am shining up the brass bicker-jiggers on my accordion, said the potato-faced blind man. How Pink Peony sent Spuds, the ball-player, up to pick 4 moons. Early one summer evening the moon was hanging in the treetops. There was a lisp of leaves, and the soft shine of the moon sifting down seemed to have something to say to the lisp of the leaves. The girl named Blixie Bimber came that particular summer evening to the corner where the potato-faced blind man sat with his accordion. She came walking, slow and thoughtful, to where he was sitting in the evening shadows. And she told him about the summer moon in the treetops, the lisp of the leaves, and the shine of the moon trying to tell something to the lisp of the leaves. The old man leaned back, fumbled the keys of his accordion, and said it loosened up things he remembered far back. On an evening like this, every tree has a moon all of its own for itself. If you climb up in 1,000 trees this evening, you can pick 1,000 moons, the old man murmured. You remind me tonight about secrets swimming deep in me. And after hesitating a little, and thinking a little, and then hesitating some more, the old man started and told this story. There was a girl I used to know one time, named Pink Peony. She was a girl with cheeks and lips the peonies talked about. When she passed a bush of peonies, some of the flowers would whisper, "She is lovelier than we are." And the other peonies would answer in a whisper, "It must be so. It must be so." Now there was a ball player named Spuds came one night to take her riding, out to a valley where the peacocks always cry before it rains, where the frogs always gamble with the golden dice after midnight. And out in that valley they came to a tall tree shooting spraggly to the sky. And high up in the spraggly shoots, where the lisp of the leaves whispers, there a moon had drifted down and was caught in the branches. "Spuds, climb up and pick that moon for me," Pink Peony sang reckless. And the ball player jumped out of the car, climbed up the tall tree, up and up till he was high and far in the spraggly branches where the moon had drifted down and was caught. Climbing down, he handed the girl a silver hat full of peach-colored pearls. She laid it on the back seat of the car where it would be safe, and they drove on. They came to another tall tree shooting spraggly to the sky, and high up the moon was caught. "Picked that one, Spuds," Peony sang reckless again. And when he came climbing down, he handed her a circle of gold with a blood-color autumn leaf, and they put her on the back seat of the car where it would be safe. Then they drove on. "Spuds, you are good to me," said Pink Peony when he climbed another tree shooting spraggly high in the sky, and came down with a brass pansy sprinkled with 2 rainbows for her. She put it on the back seat where it would be safe, and they drove on. One time more Spuds climbed up and came down with what he picked, up where the moon was caught in the high spraggly branches. "An Egyptian collar frozen in diamond cobwebs for you," he said. "You are a dear, Spuds," she said, reckless with a look into his eyes. She laid the Egyptian collar frozen in diamond cobwebs on the back seat of the car where it would be safe, and they drove on. They listened a while. They stopped the car and listened a longer while to the frogs gambling with golden dice after midnight. And when at last they heard the peacocks crying, they knew it was going to rain, so they drove home. And while the peacocks were crying, and just before they started home, they looked in the back seat of the car at the silver hat full of peach-color pearls, the circle of gold with a blood-color autumn leaf, the brass pansy sprinkled with 2 rainbows, the Egyptian collar frozen in diamond cobwebs. Driving home, the spray of a violet dawn was on the east sky, and it was nearly daylight when they drove up to the front door of Pink Peony's home. She ran into the house to get a basket to carry the presents in. She came running out of the house with a basket to carry the presents in. She looked in the back seat. She felt with her hands and fingers all over the back seat. In the back seat she could find only 4 oranges. They opened the oranges, and in each orange they found a yellow silk handkerchief. Today, if you go to the house where Pink Peony and Spuds are living, you will find 4 children playing there, each with a yellow silk handkerchief tied around the neck in a mystic slipknot. Each child has a moon face and a moon name. And sometimes their father and mother pile them all into a car, and they ride out to the valley where the peacocks always cry before it rains, and where the frogs always gamble with golden dice after midnight. and what they look longest at is a summer moon hanging in the treetops when there is a lisp of leaves, and the shine of the moon and the lisp of the leaves seem to be telling each other something. So the potato face came to a finish with his story. Blixie Bimber kissed him good night on the nose, saying, "You loosened up beautiful tonight." 6. 3 stories about moonlight, pigeons, bees, Egypt, Jesse James, Spanish onions, the queen of the cracked heads, the king of the paper sacks. People, Dippy the Wisp, Slick Me Liz, the potato face blind man, Egypt, Jesse James, Spanish onions, the queen of the cracked heads, the king of the paper sacks, the queen of the empty hats, hot balloons, a snooks, a gringo sweetheart, Dippy's nail-eating rats, Sooners, boomers, more people, cracked heads, clock, eating goats, baby alligators, pink and purple, peanuts, empty hats, bats, cats, rats, rag pickers, rag handlers, squirrels, fish, baboons, black cats, a steel car, an air car, gophers, how Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz came in the moonshine, where the sky shook a rain down one Saturday night over the people, the post office, and the peanut stand in the village of liver and onions. And after the rain, the sky shook loose. A moonshine came with gold on the rain pools. And a west wind came out of the west sky and shook the moonshine gold on the tops of the rain pools. Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz came, 2 tough pony girls, 2 limber prairie girls, in the moonshine humming little Humpty Dumpty songs. They came to the post office corner where the potato-faced blind man sat hugging his accordion, wondering what was next and who and why. He was saying to himself, "Who was it told me the rats on the moon in the middle of the winter locked their mittens in ice boxes?" And just then Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz came flipping along, saying, "It is a misty, moisty evening in the moonshine, isn't it?" And he answered, "The moon is a round gold door with silver transoms tonight. Bumblebees and honeybees are chasing each other over the gold door of the moon and up over the silver transoms." Dippy the Wisp took out a bee bag, took bees out of the bee bag, balanced the bees on her thumb, humming a Humpty Dumpty song. And Slip Me Liz, looking on, joined in on the Humpty Dumpty song. And, of course, the bees began buzzing and buzzing their bee Humpty Dumpty song. "Have you fastened names on them?" asked the potato face. "These 3 on my thumb. These 3 special blue-violet bees. I put their names on silk-white ribbons and tied the ribbons to their knees. This is Egypt. She has inkwells in her ears. This is Jesse James. He puts postage stamps on his nose. This is Spanish onions. She likes pearl-color handkerchiefs around her yellow neck. Bees belong in bee bags, but these are different," the old man murmured. "Runaway bees these are," Dippy the Wisp went on. "They buzz away, they come buzzing back, buzzing home, buzzing secrets, syllables, snitches. Today Egypt came buzzing home with her inkwells in her ears. And Egypt buzzed. I flew, and I buzzed and buzzed, far, far away, till I came where I met the queen of the cracked heads with her head all cracked. And she took me by the foot and took me to the palace of the cracked heads with their heads all cracked. The palace was full of goats walking up and down the stairs, sliding on the banisters, eating bingety-bing clocks. Before he bites the clock and chews and swallows and eats the bingety-bing clock, I noticed, each goat winds up the clock and fixes it to go off, bling-bling bingety-bing, after he eats it down. I noticed that. And the fat, puffy goats, the fat, waddly goats, had extra clocks hum on their horns, and the clocks, tired of waiting, spoke to each other in the bingety-bing clock talk. I noticed that too. I stayed all morning and I saw them feed the big goats, big hunks, and the little goats, little hunks, and the big clocks, big bings, and the little clocks, little bings. At last, in the afternoon, the queen of the cracked heads came with her cracked head to say goodbye to me. She was sitting on a ladder feeding baby clocks to baby alligators, winding the clocks and fixing the bingety bings. So after the baby alligators swallowed the clocks, I heard them singing, "Bling, bling, bingety bing." And the queen was reading the alphabet to the littlest of the baby alligators. And they were saying the alligator ABC while she was saying the ABC of the cracked heads. At last she said goodbye to me. Goodbye and come again soon. Goodbye and stay longer next time. When I went out of the door, all the baby alligators climbed up the ladder and Bingety blinged goodbye to me. I buzzed home fast because I was lonesome. I am so glad to be home again. The potato face looked up and said, "This is nice as the rats on the moon in the middle of the winter locking their mittens in the icebox. Tell us next about that blue-violet bumblebee, Jesse James." "Jesse James," said Tippy the Wisp. "Jesse James came buzzing home with a postage stamp on his nose." And Jesse James buzzed. I flew and buzzed far, far away till I came where I met the king of the paper sacks who lives in a palace of paper sacks. I went inside the palace expecting to see paper sacks everywhere. But instead of paper sacks, the palace was full of pink and purple peanuts walking up and down the stairs, washing their faces, stitching handkerchiefs. In the evening, all the pink and purple peanuts put on their overshoes and make paper sacks. The king of the paper sacks walks around and around among them, saying, "If anybody asks you who I am, tell them I am the king of the paper sacks." And one little peanut flipped up one time in the king's face and asked, "Say it again, who do you think you are?" And it made the king so bitter in his feelings, he reached out his hand, and with a sweep and a swoop he swept 50 pink and purple peanuts into a paper sack and cried out, "A nickel a sack, a nickel a sack, a nickel a sack!" And he threw them into a trash pile of tin cans. When I went away, he shook hands with me and said, "Goodbye, Jesse James, you old buzzer. If anybody asks you, tell them you saw the king of the paper sacks where he lives." When I went away from the palace, the doors and the window sills, the corners of the roofs and the eave troughs where the rain runs off, they were all full of pink and purple peanuts standing in their overshoes, washing their faces, stitching handkerchiefs, calling goodbye to me, goodbye and come again, goodbye and stay longer next time. Then I came buzzing home because I was lonesome, and I am so glad to be home again. The potato face looked up again and said, "It is a misty, moisty evening in the moonshine. Now tell us about that blue-violet honeybee, Spanish onions." And Dippy the Wisp tied a slipknot in the pearl-color handkerchief around the yellow neck of Spanish Onions and said, "Spanish Onions came buzzing back home with her face dirty and scared, and she told us, I flew and I buzzed and buzzed till I came where I met the Queen of the Empty Hats. She took me by the foot and took me across the city of the empty hats, saying under her breath, 'There is a screw loose somewhere. There is a leak in the tank.' Fat rats, fat bats, fat cats came along under empty hats, and the queen always said under her breath, 'There is a screw loose somewhere. There is a leak in the tank.' In the houses, on the street, riding on the rattlers and the razcars, the only people were hats, empty hats. When the fat rats changed hats with the fat bats, the hats were empty. When the fat bats changed those hats with the fat cats, the hats were empty. I took off my hat and saw it was empty. I began to feel like an empty hat myself. I got scared. I jumped loose from the Queen of the Empty Hats and buzzed back home fast. I am so glad to be home again." The potato face sat hugging his accordion. He looked up and said, "Put the bees back in the bee bag. They buzz too many secret syllables and snitches." "What do you expect when the moon is a gold door with silver transoms?" asked Slip-me Liz. "Yes," said Dippy the Wisp. "What do you expect when the bumblebees and the honeybees are chasing each other over the gold door of the moon and up over the silver transoms? And the two tough pony girls, the two limber prairie girls, went away humming a little Humpty Dumpty song across the moonshine gold on the tops of the rain pools. How Hot Balloons and his pigeon daughters crossed over into the Rootabaga Country. Hot Balloons was a man who lived all alone among people who sell slips, flips, flicks, and chicks by the dozen, by the boxcar job lot, back and forth to each other. Hot Balloons used to open the window in the morning and say to the rag pickers and the rag handlers, "Far, far away the pigeons are calling. Far, far away the white wings are dipping in the sky blue." And the rag pickers and the rag handlers looked up from their rag bags and said, "Far, far away the rags are flying. Far, far away the rags are whistling in the sky wind." Now 2 pigeons came walking up to the doorknob and the doorbell under the window of Hot Balloons. One of the pigeons rang the bell. The other pigeon, too, stepped up to the bell and gave it a ring. Then they waited, tying the shoestrings on their shoes and the bonnet strings under their chins while they waited. Hot Balloons opened the door, and they flew into his hands, 1 pigeon apiece in each of his hands, flipping and fluttering their wings, calling, "Kalu, kalu, kalu, kalu," leaving a letter in his hands and then flying away fast. Hot Balloon stepped out on the front steps to read the letter where the light was good in the daylight because it was so early in the morning. The letter was on paper scribbled over in pigeon-foot blue handwriting with many secrets and syllables. After Hot Balloons read the letter, he said to himself, "I wonder if those 2 pigeons are my 2 runaway daughters, Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz. When they ran away, they said they would cross the Shampoo River and go away into the Rootabaga Country to live. And I have heard it is a law of the Rootabaga Country, whenever a girl crosses the Shampoo River to come back where she used to be, she changes into a pigeon, and she stays a pigeon till she crosses back over the Shampoo River into the Rootabaga Country again." And he shaded his eyes with his hands and looked far, far away in the sky blue. And by looking long and hard, he saw far, far away in the sky blue the 2 white pigeons dipping their wings in the blue, flying fast, circling and circling higher and higher, toward the Shampoo River, toward the Rootabaga Country. "I wonder, I think so," he said to himself. I think so. It must be those 2 pigeons are my 2 runaway daughters, my 2 girls, Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz." He took out the letter and read it again, right side up, upside down, back and forth. "It is the first time I ever read pigeon-foot blue handwriting," he said to himself, and the way he read the letter, it said to him, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, come home to us in the Rootabaga Country where the pigeons call, 'Kalu, kalu, kalu, kalu,' where the squirrels carry ladders and the wildcats ask riddles and the fish jump out of the rivers and speak to the frying pans, where the baboons take care of the babies and the black cats come and go in orange and gold stockings, where the birds wear rose and purple hats on Monday afternoons up in the skylights in the evening. Signed, Dippy the Wisp, Slip Me Liz." And reading the letter a second time, Hot Balloons said to himself, "No wonder it is scribbled over the paper in pigeon-foot blue handwriting. No wonder it is full of secrets and syllables." So he jumped into a shirt and a necktie, he jumped into a hat and a vest, and he jumped into a steel car, starting with a sniz and a snoof till it began running smooth and even as a catfoot. "I will ride to the Shampoo River faster than 2 pigeons fly," he said. "I will be there." Which he was. He got there before the 2 pigeons, but it was no use. For the rain and the rainstorm was working, and the rain and the rainstorm tore down and took and washed away the steel bridge over the Shampoo River. Now there is only an air bridge to cross on, and a steel car drops down, falls off, falls through if it runs on an air bridge, he said. So he was all alone with the rain and the rainstorm all around him, and far as he could see by shading his eyes and looking, there was only the rain and the rainstorm across the river, and the air bridge. While he waited for the rain and the rainstorm to go down, 2 pigeons came flying into his hands, 1 apiece into each hand, flipping and fluttering their wings and calling, "Kalu, kalu, kalu, kalu." and he could tell by the way they began tying the shoestrings on their shoes and the bonnet strings under their chins they were the same two pigeons ringing the doorbell that morning. They wrote on his thumbnails in pigeon-foot blue handwriting, and he read their handwriting, asking him why he didn't cross over the Shampoo River. And he explained, "There is only an air bridge to cross on. A steel car drops down, falls off, falls through if it runs on an air bridge. Change my steel car to an air car. Then I can cross the air bridge." The pigeons flipped and fluttered, dipped their wings and called, "Kalu, kalu, kalu, kalu." And they scribbled their pigeon feet on his thumbnail, telling him to wait. So the pigeons went flying across the Shampoo River. They came back with a basket. In the basket was a snooks and a gringo. And the snooks and the gringo took hammers, jacks, flanges, nuts, screws, bearings, ball bearings, axles, axle grease, axe handles, spits, spitters, spitballs, and spitfires, and worked. "It's a hot job," said the snooks to the gringo. "I'll say it's a hot job," said the gringo, answering the snoops. "We'll give this one the merry razoo," said the snooks to the gringo, working overtime and double time. "Yes, we'll put her to the cleaners and shoot her into high," said the gringo, answering the snooks, working overtime and double time. They changed the steel to air, made an air car out of the steel car, put hot balloons and the two pigeons into the air car, and drove the air car across the air bridge. And nowadays when people talk about it in the Rootabaga Country, they say, "The snooks and the gringo drove the air car across the air bridge clean and cool as a whistle in the wind." As soon as the car got off the bridge and over into the Rootabaga Country, the two pigeons changed in a flash. And Hot Balloon saw they were his two daughters, his two runaway girls, Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz, standing and smiling at him and looking fresh and free as two fresh fish in a free river, fresh and free as two fresh bimbos in a bamboo tree. He kissed them both, two long kisses, and while he was kissing them the snooks and the gringo worked double time and overtime and changed the air car back into a steel car. And Dippy the Wisp and Slip Me Liz rode in that car, starting with a sniz and a snoof till it began running smooth and even as a catfoot, showing their father hot balloons, where the squirrels carry ladders, and the wildcats ask riddles and the fish jump out of the rivers and speak to the frying pans, where the baboons take care of the babies and the black cats come and go in orange and gold stockings, where the birds wear rose and purple hats on Monday afternoons up in the skylights in the evening. And often on a Saturday night or a New Year Eve or a Christmas morning, Hot Balloons remembers back how things used to be, and he tells his two girls about the rag pickers and the rag handlers back among the people who sell slips, flips, flicks, and chicks by the dozen, by the boxcar job lot, back and forth to each other. How two sweetheart Dippies sat in the moonlight on a lumberyard fence and heard about the Sooners and the Boomers. Not so very far and not so very near the village of Liver and Onions is a dippy little town where dippy people used to live. And it was long, long ago the sweetheart Dippies stood in their windows and watched the dips of the star dippers in the dip of the sky. It was the Dippies who took the running wild oleander, and the cunning wild rambler rose and kept them so. The running wild winters let them alone. "It is easy to be a Dippy among the Dippies, isn't it?" the sweetheart Dippies whispered to each other, sitting in the leaf shadows of the oleander, the rambler rose. The name of this Dippy town came by accident. The name of the town is Thumbs Up, and it used to be named Thumbs Down, and expects to change its name back and forth between Thumbs Up and Thumbs Down. The running wild oleanders and the running wild rambler roses grow there over the big lumber yards, where all the old lumber goes. The Dippies and the Dippy sweethearts go out there to those lumber yards and sit on the fence, moonlight nights, and look at the lumber. The rusty nails in the lumber get rustier and rustier till they drop out. And whenever they drop out, there is always a rat standing under to take the nail in his teeth and chew the nail and eat it. For this is the place the nail-eating rats come to from all over the Rootabaga Country. Father rats and mother rats send the young rats there to eat nails and get stronger. If a young rat comes back from a trip to the lumber yards and thumbs up and he meets another young rat going to those lumber yards, they say to each other, "Where have you been?" to thumbs up. "And how do you feel?" "Hard as nails." Now one night 2 of the Dippies, a sweetheart boy and girl, went out to the big lumber yards and sat on the fence and looked at the lumber and the running wild oleanders and the running wild oleanders and the running wild oleanders and the running wild rambler roses. And they saw 2 big rusty nails, getting rustier and rustier, drop out of the lumber and drop into the teeth of 2 young rats. And the 2 young rats sat up on their tails there in the moonlight under the oleanders, under the roses, and one of the young rats told the other young rat a story he made up out of his head. Chewing on the big rusty nail and then swallowing, telling more of the story after swallowing, and before beginning to chew the nail again, this is the story he told, and this is the story the 2 Dippies, the 2 sweethearts sitting on the fence in the moonlight, heard. Far away where the sky drops down, and the sunsets open doors for the nights to come through, where the running winds meet, change faces, and come back, there is a prairie where the green grass grows all around. And on that prairie the gophers, the black and brown striped ground squirrels, sit with their backs straight up, sitting on their soft paddy tails, sitting in the spring song murmur of the south wind, saying to each other, "This is the prairie, and the prairie belongs to us." Now far back in the long time the gophers came there, chasing each other, playing the green grass grew all around, playing cross-tag, hop-tag, skip-tag, billy-bee-tag, billy-bee-it. The razorback hogs came then, eating pig-nuts, potatoes, pawpaws, pumpkins. The wild horse, the buffalo, came. The moose, with spraggly branches of antlers spreading out over his head, the moose came. And the fox, the wolf. The gophers flipped a quick flip-flop back into their gopher holes when the fox, the wolf, came. And the fox, the wolf, stood at the holes and said, "You look like rats, you run like rats, you are rats, rats with stripes. Bah! You are only rats. Bah!" It was the first time anybody said bah to the gophers. They sat in a circle with their noses up asking, "What does this bah mean?" And an old-timer, with his hair falling off in patches, with the stripes on his soft paddy tail patched with patches, this old-timer of a gopher said, "Bah!" speaks more than it means whenever it is spoken. Then the Sooners and the Boomers came, saying, "Bah!" and saying it many new ways, till the fox, the wolf, the moose, the wild horse, the buffalo, the razorback hog picked up their feet and ran away without looking back. The Sooners and Boomers began making houses, sod houses, log, lumber, plaster and lath houses, stone, brick, steel houses. But most of the houses were lumber with nails to hold the lumber together to keep the rain off and push the wind back and hold the blizzards outside. In the beginning, the Sooners and Boomers told stories, spoke jokes, made songs with their arms on each other's shoulders. They dug wells, helping each other get water. They built chimneys together, helping each other let the smoke out of their houses. And every year, the day before Thanksgiving, they went in cahoots with their post-hole diggers and dug all the post-holes for a year to come. That was in the morning. In the afternoon, they took each other's cistern cleaners and cleaned all the cisterns for a year to come. And the next day on Thanksgiving, they split turkey wishbones and thanked each other they had all the post holes dug and all the cisterns cleaned for a year to come. If the Boomers had to have broom corn to make brooms, the Sooners came saying, "Here is your broom corn." If the Sooners had to have a gallon of molasses, the Boomers came saying, "Here is your gallon of molasses." They handed each other big duck eggs to fry, big goose eggs to boil, purple pigeon eggs for Easter breakfast. Wagon loads of buff banty eggs went back and forth between the Sooners and Boomers, and they took big hay racks full of buff banty hens and traded them for hay racks full of buff banty roosters. And one time at a picnic one summer afternoon, the Sooners gave the Boomers 1,000 golden ice tongs with hearts and hands carved on the handles. And the Boomers gave the Sooners 1,000 silver wheelbarrows with hearts and hands carved on the handles. Then came pigs, 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 and more pigs. And the Sooners and Boomers said the pigs had to be painted. There was a war to decide whether the pigs should be painted pink or green. Pink won. The next war was to decide whether the pigs should be painted checks or stripes. Checks won. The next war after that was to decide whether the checks should be painted pink or green. Green won. Then came the longest war of all up till that time, and this war decided the pigs should be painted both pink and green, both checks and stripes. They rested then, but it was only a short rest, for then came the war to decide whether peach pickers must pick peaches on Tuesday mornings or on Saturday afternoons. Tuesday mornings won. This was a short war. Then came a long war to decide whether telegraph pole climbers must eat onions at noon with spoons, or whether dishwashers must keep their money in pig's ears with padlocks pinched on with pincers. So the wars went on. Between wars they called each other goofs and snoofs, grave robbers, pickpockets, porch climbers, pie thieves, pie-faced mutts, big bums, big greasy bums, dummies, mummies, rummies, sneezics, bohunks, wops, snorkies, ditch diggers, peanuts, fatheads, sapheads, pinheads, pickle faces, horse thieves, rubbernecks, big pieces of cheese, big bags of wind, snabs, scabs, and dirty sniveling snitches. Sometimes, when they got tired of calling each other names, they scratched in the air with their fingers and made faces with their tongues out, twisted like pretzels. After a while, it seemed, there was no corn, no broom corn, no brooms, not even teeny sweepings of corn or brooms. And there were no duck eggs to fry, goose eggs to boil, no buff banty eggs, no buff banty hens, no buff banty roosters, no wagons for wagon loads of buff banty eggs, no hayracks for hayrack loads of buff banty hens and buff banty roosters. And 1,000 golden ice tongs the Sooners gave the Boomers, and 1,000 silver wheelbarrows the Boomers gave the Sooners, both with hearts and hands carved on the handles. They were long ago broken up in one of the early wars, deciding pigs must be painted both pink and green with both checks and stripes. And now, at last, there were no more pigs to paint either pink or green or with checks or stripes. The pigs were gone. So the Sooners and Boomers all got lost in the wars, or they screwed wooden legs on their stump legs and walked away to bigger prairies, or they started away for the rivers and mountains, stopping always to count how many fleas there were in any bunch of fleas they met. If you see anybody who stops to count the fleas in a bunch of fleas, that is a sign he is either a Sooner or a Boomer. So again, the gophers, the black and brown striped ground squirrels, sit with their backs straight up, sitting on their soft patty tails, sitting in the spring song murmur of the south wind, saying, "This is the prairie, and the prairie belongs to us." Far away today where the sky drops down and the sunsets open doors for the nights to come through, where the running winds meet, change faces, and come back, there the gophers are playing the green grass grew all around, playing cross tag, skip tag, hop tag, billy bee tag, billy bee it. And sometimes they sit in a circle and ask, "What does this bah mean?" And an old-timer answers, "Bah speaks more than it means whenever it is spoken." That was the story the young rat under the oleanders, under the roses, told the other young rat, while the two sweetheart dippies sat on the fence in the moonlight, looking at the lumber and listening. The young rat who told the story hardly got started eating the nail he was chewing, while the young rat that did the listening chewed up and swallowed down a whole nail. As the two dippies on the fence looked at the running wild oleander and the running wild rambler roses over the lumber in the moonlight, they said to each other, "It's easy to be a dippy among the dippies, isn't it?" And they climbed down from the fence and went home in the moonlight. 7. 2 stories out of the tall grass. people: John, Jack, Johannes, Humadumma Duffer, Feedbox, Eva, Evelyn, Evangeline, Humadumma Duffer, Sky, Blue, the Harvest Moon, a haystack, cricket baby, moon, half moon, silver moon, doorbells, chimneys, cellars, the night policeman in the village of Cream Puffs, Butterfingers, Three Strikes Cub, ball players, the haystack, cricket, and how things are different up in the moon towns. There is an old man with wrinkles like wrinkled leather on his face living among the cornfields on the rolling prairie near the Shampoo River. His name is John Jack Johannes Humadumma Duffer. His cronies and the people who know him call him Feedbox. His daughter is a cornfield girl with hair shining the way corn silk shines when the corn is ripe in the fall time. The tassels of corn silk hang down and blow in the wind with a rusty dark gold, and they seem to get mixed with her hair. Her name is Eva Evelyn Evangeline Humadumma Duffer, and her chums and the people who know her call her Sky Blue. The 11th month, November, comes every year to the corn belt on that rolling prairie. The wagons bring the corn from the fields in the harvest days, and the cracks in the corn cribs shine with the yellow and gold of the corn. The harvest moon comes too. They say it stacks sheaves of the November gold moonshine into gold corn shocks on the sky. So they say. On those mornings in November, that time of the year, the old man they call Feedbox sits where the sun shines against the boards of a corn crib. The girl they call Sky Blue, even though her name is Eva Evelyn Evangeline Humadumma Duffer, she comes along one November morning. Her father is sitting in the sun with his back against a corn crib, and he tells her he always sits there every year listening to the mice in the cornfields getting ready to move into the big farmhouse. When the frost comes and the corn is husked and put in the corn cribs, the fields are cleaned and the cold nights come. Papa Mouse and Mamma Mouse tell the little ones it is time to sneak into the cellar and the garret and the attic of the farmhouse, said Feedbox to Sky Blue. I am listening, she said, and I can hear the Papa Mouse and the Mamma Mouse telling the little ones how they will find rags and paper and wool and splinters and shavings and hair, and they will make warm nests for the winter in the big farmhouse, if no kits, cats, nor kitty cats get them. The old man, Feedbox, rubbed his back and his shoulders against the boards of the corn crib and washed his hands almost as if he might be washing them in the gold of the autumn sunshine. Then he told this happening, this time of the year when the mouse in the fields whispers so I can hear him. I remember one November when I was a boy. One night in November when the harvest moon was shining and stacking gold corn shocks in the sky, I got lost. Instead of going home, I was going away from home. And the next day and the next night, instead of going home, I was going away from home. That second night I came to a haystack where a yellow and gold cricket was singing. And he was singing the same songs the crickets sing in the haystacks back home where the Humadumma Duffers raise hay and corn in the corn belt near the Shampoo River. And he told me, this cricket did, he told me when he listened, soft, if everything was still in the grass and the sky, he could hear golden crickets singing in the corn shocks the harvest moon had stacked in the sky. I went to sleep listening to the singing of the yellow and gold crickets in that haystack. It was early in the morning, long before daylight, I guess. The two of us went on a trip away from the haystack. We took a trip. The yellow and gold cricket led the way. It is the call of the harvest moon, he said to me in a singing whisper. We are going up to the moon towns where the harvest moon stacks the corn shocks on the sky. We came to a little valley in the sky, and the harvest moon had slipped 3 little towns into that valley, 3 little towns named Half Moon, Baby Moon, and Silver Moon. In the town of Half Moon they look out of the doors and come in at the windows, so they have taken all the doorbells off the doors and put them on the windows. Whenever we rang a doorbell, we went to a window. In the town of Baby Moon, they had windows on the chimneys, so the smoke can look out of the window and see the weather before it comes out over the top of the chimney. And whenever the chimneys get tired of being stuck up on the top of the roof, the chimneys climb down and dance in the cellar. We saw 5 chimneys climb down and join hands and bump heads and dance a laughing chimney dance. In the town of Silver Moon, the cellars are not satisfied. They say to each other, "We are tired of being under, always under." So the cellars slip out from being under, always under. They slip out and climb up on top of the roof. And that was all we saw up among the moon towns of Half Moon, Baby Moon, and Silver Moon. We had to get back to the haystack so as to get up in the morning after our night's sleep. "This time of the year I always remember that November," said the old man, feed box to his daughter Sky Blue. And Sky Blue said, "I am going to sleep in a haystack sometime in November, just to see if a yellow and gold cricket will come with a singing whisper and take me on a trip to where the doorbells are on the windows and the chimneys climb down and dance." The old man murmured, "Don't forget the cellars tired of being under, always under." Why, the big ball game between hot grounders and the grandstanders was a hot game. Up near the village of Cream Puffs is a string of ball towns hiding in the tall grass. Passengers in the railroad trains look out of the windows, and the tall grass stands up so they can't see the ball towns. But the ball towns are there, and the tall grass is full of pitchers, catchers, basemen, fielders, shortstops, sluggers, southpaws, and backstops. They play ball till dark, and after dark they talk ball. The big, fast ball players in the Rootabaga Country all come from these ball towns in the tall grass. The towns used to have names like names in books. But now the names are all like ball talk: knock the cover off, home plate, chest protector, grandstand, 9 innings, 3 balls and 2 strikes, bases full and 2 out, big league, bush league, hot grounder, outdrop, beeliner, muffs and pickups, slide Kelly, slide, pasted on the nose. Now, the night policeman in the village of Cream Puffs stopped in at the cigar store one night, and a gang of cub ball players loafing and talking ball talk asked him if there was anything in the wind. And he told them this happening. I was sitting on the front steps of the post office last night thinking how many letters get lost and how many letters never get answered. A ball player came along with a package and said his name was Butterfingers, and he was the heavy hitter, the hard slugger, for the grandstand ball team playing a championship game the day before with the hot grounders ball team. He came to the village of Cream Puffs the day before the game, found a Snooks and a Gringo, and got the Snooks and the Gringo to make him a home run shirt. "Wearing a home run shirt," he told me, "you knock a home run every time you come to bat." He said he knocked a home run every time he came to bat, and it was his home runs won the game for the grandstanders. He was carrying a package and said the home run shirt was in the package, and he was taking it back to the Snooks and the Gringo because he promised he wouldn't keep it, and it belonged to the Snooks and the Gringo, and they only rented it to him for the championship game. The last I saw of him, he was hot-footing it, pitty-pat, up the street with the package. Well, I just said tra-la-loo to Butterfingers when along comes another ball player. He had a package, too, and he said his name was 3 Strikes, and he was the left-handed southpaw pitcher for the hot grounders team the day before playing a game against the grandstand team. He said he knew unless he put over some classy pitching, the game was lost and everything was goose eggs. So he came to the village of Cream Puffs the day before the game, found a Snooks and a Gringo, and got the Snooks and the Gringo to make him a spitball shirt. "A spitball looks easy," he told me, "but it has smoke and whiskers and nobody can touch it." He said he handed the grandstanders a line of inshoots close to their chins, and they never got to first base. 3 Strikes was carrying a package, and he said the spitball shirt was in the package, and he was taking it back to the Snooks and the Gringo because he promised he wouldn't keep it, and it belonged to the Snooks and the Gringo, and they only rented it to him. The last I saw of him, he was hot-footing it, pitty-pat, up the street with a package. The gang of cub ball players in the cigar store asked the night policeman, "Who won the game?" Was it the grandstanders or the hot grounders took the gravy? You can search me for the answer, he told the boys. If the snooks and the gringo come past the post office tonight when I sit on the front steps wondering how so many letters get lost and how so many never get answered, I will ask the snooks and the gringo, and if they tell me tonight, I'll tell you tomorrow night. And ever since then, when they talk ball talk in the ball towns hiding in the tall grass, they say the only sure way to win a ball game is to have a pitcher with a spitball shirt, and over that a home run shirt, both made by a snooks and a gringo. 8. Two stories out of Oklahoma and Nebraska. People Jonas Huckabuck, Mama Huckabuck, Pony Huckabuck, a yellow squash, a silver buckle, a Chinese silver slipper buckle pop, corn yang hoo hoo. Their mother, the shadow of the goose, the left foot of the shadow of the goose, an Oklahoma home. The Huckabuck family and how they raised popcorn in Nebraska and quit and came back. Jonas Huckabuck was a farmer in Nebraska with a wife, Mama Huckabuck, and a daughter, Pony Huckabuck. Your father gave you two names the same in front, people had said to him, and he answered, yes, two names are easier to remember. If you call me by my first name, Jonas, and I don't hear you then when you call me by my, and, he went on, I call my pony-face girl Pony because if she doesn't hear me the first time, she always does the second. And so they lived on a farm where they raised popcorn, these three. Jonas Huckabuck, his wife, Mama Huckabuck, and their pony-faced daughter, Pony Huckabuck. After they harvested the crop one year, they had the barns, the cribs, the sheds, the shacks, and all the cracks and corners of the farm all filled with popcorn. We came out to Nebraska to raise popcorn, said Jonas, and I guess we got nearly enough popcorn this year for the popcorn poppers and all the friends and relations of all the popcorn poppers in these United States. And this was the year Pony was going to bake her first squash pie all by herself. In one corner of the corn crib, all covered over with popcorn, she had a secret, a big round squash, a fat yellow squash, a rich squash all spotted with spots of gold. She carried the squash into the kitchen, took a long, sharp, shining knife, and then she cut the squash in the middle till she had two big half squashes. And inside, just like outside, it was rich yellow, spotted with spots of gold. And there was a shine of silver. And Pony wondered why silver should be in a squash. She picked and plunged with her fingers till she pulled it out. It's a buckle, she said, a silver buckle, a Chinese silver slipper buckle. She ran with it to her father and said, look what I found when I cut open the golden yellow squash spotted with gold spots. It is a Chinese silver slipper buckle. It means our luck is going to change, and we don't know whether it will be good luck or bad luck, said Jonas to his daughter, Pony Huckabuck. Then she ran with it to her mother and said, look what I found when I cut open the yellow squash spotted with spots of gold. It is a Chinese silver slipper buckle. It means our luck is going to change, and we don't know whether it will be good luck or bad luck, said Mama Huckabuck. And that night a fire started in the barns, crib, sheds, shacks, cracks, and corners where the popcorn harvest was kept. All night long the popcorn popped. In the morning the ground all around the farmhouse and the barn was covered with white popcorn, so it looked like a heavy fall of snow. All the next day the fire kept on, and the popcorn popped till it was up to the shoulders of Pony when she tried to walk from the house to the barn. And that night in all the barns, cribs, sheds, shacks, cracks, and corners of the farm, the popcorn went on popping. In the morning, when Jonas Huckabuck looked out of the upstairs window, he saw the popcorn popping and coming higher and higher. It was nearly up to the window. Before evening and dark of that day, Jonas Huckabuck and his wife Mama Huckabuck and their daughter Pony Huckabuck all went away from the farm saying, "We came to Nebraska to raise popcorn, but this is too much. We will not come back till the wind blows away the popcorn. We will not come back till we get a sign and a signal." They went to Oskaloosa, Iowa. And the next year, Pony Huckabuck was very proud because when she stood on the sidewalks in the street, she could see her father sitting high on the seat of a coal wagon driving two big spanking horses hitched with shining brass harness in front of the coal wagon. And though Pony and Jonas were proud, very proud all that year, there never came a sign, a signal. The next year again was a proud year, exactly as proud a year as they spent in Oskaloosa. They went to Paducah, Kentucky, to Defiance, Ohio, Peoria, Illinois, Indianapolis, Indiana, Walla Walla, Washington. And in all these places, Pony Huckabuck saw her father, Jonas Huckabuck, standing in rubber boots deep down in a ditch with a shining steel shovel shoveling yellow clay and black mud from down in the ditch high and high up over his shoulders. And though it was a proud year, they got no sign, no signal. The next year came. It was the proudest of all. This was the year Jonas Huckabuck and his family lived in Elgin, Illinois, and Jonas was watchman in a watch factory watching the watches. "I know where you have been, Mama Huckabuck would say of an evening to Pony Huckabuck. "You have been down to the watch factory watching your father watch the watches." "Yes," said Pony. "Yes. And this evening when I was watching Father watch the watches in the watch factory, I looked over my left shoulder and I saw a policeman with a star and brass buttons, and he was watching me to see if I was watching Father watch the watches in the watch factory." It was a proud year. Pony saved her money. Thanksgiving came. Pony said, "I am going to get a squash to make a squash pie." She hunted from one grocery to another. She kept her eyes on the farm wagons coming into Elgin with squashes. She found what she wanted, the yellow squash spotted with gold spots. She took it home, cut it open, and saw the inside was like the outside, all rich yellow spotted with gold spots. There was a shine like silver. She picked and plunged with her fingers and pulled till at last she pulled out the shine of silver. "It's a sign, it is a signal," she said. "It is a buckle, a slipper buckle, a Chinese silver slipper buckle. It is the mate to the other buckle. Our luck is going to change. Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo." She told her father and mother about the buckle. They went back to the farm in Nebraska. The wind by this time had been blowing and blowing for 3 years, and all the popcorn was blown away. "Now we are going to be farmers again," said Jonas Huckabuck to Mama Huckabuck, and to Pony Huckabuck. "And we are going to raise cabbages, beets, and turnips. We are going to raise squash, rutabaga, pumpkins, and peppers for pickling. We are going to raise wheat, oats, barley, rye. We are going to raise corn such as Indian corn and Kaffir corn, but we are not going to raise any popcorn for the popcorn poppers to be popping." And the pony-faced daughter, Pony Huckabuck, was proud because she had on new black slippers, and around her ankles, holding the slippers on the left foot and the right foot, she had 2 buckles, silver buckles, Chinese silver slipper buckles. They were mates. Sometimes on Thanksgiving Day and Christmas and New Year's, she tells her friends to be careful when they open a squash. "Squashes make your luck change good to bad and bad to good," says Pony. "Yang Yang and Hoo Hoo, or the song of the left foot of the shadow of the goose in Oklahoma." Yang Yang and Hoo Hoo were 2 girls who used to live in Battle Axe, Michigan, before they moved to Wagon Wheel Gap, Colorado, and back to Broken Doors, Ohio, and then over to Open Windows, Iowa, and at last down to Alfalfa Clover, Oklahoma, where they say, "Our Oklahoma home is in Oklahoma." One summer morning, Yang Yang and Hoo Hoo woke up saying to each other, "Our Oklahoma home is in Oklahoma." And it was that morning the shadow of a goose flew in at the open window, just over the bed where Yang Yang and Hoo Hoo slept with their eyes shut all night and woke with their eyes open in the morning. The shadow of the goose fluttered a while along the ceiling, flickered a while along the wall, and then after one more flutter and flicker put itself on the wall like a picture of a goose put there to look at, only it was a living picture, and it made its neck stretch in a curve and then stretch straight. "Yang Yang," cried Yang Yang. "Yang Yang, Yang Yang." "Hoo Hoo," sang Hoo Hoo, "Hoo Hoo." And while Hoo Hoo kept on calling a soft, low, coaxing Hoo Hoo, Yang Yang kept on crying a hard, noisy, nagging Yang Yang till everybody in the house upstairs and down and everybody in the neighbor houses heard her Yang Yanging. The shadow of the goose lifted its left wing a little, lifted its right foot a little, got up on its goose legs, and walked around and around in a circle on its goose feet. And every time it walked around in a circle it came back to the same place it started from, with its left foot or right foot in the same foot spot it started from. Then it stayed there in the same place like a picture put there to look at, only it was a living picture with its neck sometimes sticking up straight in the air and sometimes bending in a long, curving bend. Yang Yang threw the bed covers off, slid out of bed and ran downstairs, Yang Yanging for her mother. But Hoo Hoo sat up in bed laughing, counting her pink toes to see if there were 10 pink toes, the same as the morning before. And while she was counting her pink toes, she looked out of the corners of her eyes at the shadow of the goose on the wall. And again the shadow of the goose lifted its left wing a little, lifted its right foot a little, got up on its goose legs and walked around and around in a circle on its goose feet. And every time it walked around in a circle it came back to the same place it started from, with its left foot or right foot back in the same foot spot it started from. Then it stayed there in the same place where it put itself on the wall like a picture to look at, only it was a living picture with its neck sticking up straight in the air and then changing so its neck was bending in a long curving bend. And all the time little Hoo Hoo was sitting up in bed counting her pink toes and looking out of the corners of her eyes at the shadow of the goose. By and by little Hoo Hoo said, "Good morning, Hoo Hoo for you." And Hoo Hoo again, "I was looking at the window when you came in. I saw you put yourself on the wall like a picture. I saw you begin to walk and come back where you started from with your neck sticking straight up and your neck bending in a bend. I give you good morning. I blow a hoo-hoo to you. I blow two of a hoo-hoo to you." Then the shadow of a goose, as if to answer good morning and as if to answer what hoo-hoo meant by saying, "I blow two of a hoo-hoo to you," stretched its neck sticking up straight and long, longer than any time yet, and then bended its neck in more of a bend than any time yet. And all the time Hoo Hoo was sitting in bed feeling of her toes with her fingers to see if she had one toe for every finger, and to see if she had one pink little toe to match her, one pink little finger, and to see if she had one fat flat big toe to match her one fat flat thumb. Then when the room was all quiet, the shadow of the goose lifted its left foot and began singing, singing just as the shadow of a goose always sings, with the left foot, very softly with the left foot, so softly you must listen with the softest little listeners you have deep inside your ears. And this was the song. This was the old-time, old-fashioned left-foot song the shadow of the goose sang for Hoo Hoo. Be a Yang Yang if you want to. Be a Hoo Hoo if you want to. The Yang Yangs always yang in the morning. The Hoo Hoos always hoo in the morning. Early in the morning the putters sit putting, putting on your nose, putting on your ears, putting in your eyes and the lashes on your eyes, putting on the chins of your chinny chin chins. and after singing the left foot song, the shadow of the goose walked around in a long circle, came back where it started from, stopped and stood still with the proud standstill of a goose, and then stretched its neck sticking up straight and long, longer than any time yet, and then bended its neck bent and twisted in longer bends than any time yet. Then the shadow took itself off the wall, fluttered and flickered along the ceiling and over the bed, flew out of the window and was gone, leaving Hoo-Hoo all alone sitting up in bed counting her pink toes. Out of the corners of her eyes she looked up at the wall of the room, at the place where the shadow of the goose put itself like a picture. And there she saw a shadow spot. She looked and saw it was a left foot, the same left foot that had been singing the left foot song. Soon Yang Yang came yang-yanging into the room holding to her mother's apron. "Hoo-hoo!" told her mother all the happenings that happened. The mother wouldn't believe it. Then Hoo-Hoo pointed up to the wall, to the left foot, the shadow spot left behind by the shadow of the goose when it took itself off the wall. And now when Yang Yang and Hoo-Hoo sleep all night with their eyes shut and wake up in the morning with their eyes open, sometimes they say, "Our Oklahoma home is in Oklahoma," and sometimes they sing, "Be a Yang Yang and Yang Yang if you want to. Be a Hoo-Hoo and Hoo-Hoo if you want to." 9. One story about big people now and little people long ago. People, Peter, Potato Blossom, Wishes, 3 Whispering Cats, Hannah, More, Susquehanna, Slimmer, How a Skyscraper and a Railroad Train Got Picked Up and Carried Away from Pig's Eye Valley. Far in the Pickaxe Mountains, Peter Potato Blossom Wishes sat with her 3 cats, Hannah, More, and Susquehanna one spring morning. She was asking different kinds of questions of the 3 cats, but she always got the same answers no matter what she asked them. They were whispering cats. Hannah was a yes cat and always whispered yes and nothing else. Hannah More was a no cat and always whispered no and nothing else. And Susquehanna was a stuttering cat and whispered halfway between yes and no, always hesitating and nothing else. "The by-lo is whistling his by-lo and by-lo again," Peter said to herself with a murmur. "It is spring in the tall timbers and over the soft black lands. The Hoo-Hoo and the Biddy-Widdies come north to make a home again. The Booblo blossoms put their cool white lips out into the blue mist. Every way I point my ears there is a by-lo whistling, his by-lo and by-lo again. The spring in the timbers and black lands calls to the spring aching in my heart." Now the 3 whispering cats heard what Peter Potato Blossom Wishes was murmuring to herself about the spring heartache. And Hannah, the yes cat, answered yes. Hannah More, the no cat, answered no, and Susquehanna, the stuttering cat, hesitated halfway between yes and no. And Peter rubbed their fur the right way, scratched them softly between the ears, and murmured to herself, "It is a don't care morning. I don't care." And that morning her heart gave a hoist and a hist when she saw a speck of a blackbird spot far and high in the sky. Coming nearer it hummed, zoomed, hong-honged, shut off the hong-hong, stop-locked and drop-locked, and came down on the ground like a big easy bird with big wings stopped. Slimmer slid out, wiped his hands on the oil rags, put a smear of axle grease on Peter's chin, kissed her on the nose, patted her ears, 2 pats. And then they went into the house and had a late breakfast, which was her second breakfast and his first. "I flew till I came to Pig's Eye Valley in the Pickaxe Mountains," Slimmer told her. "The pickaxe pigs there run digging with their pickaxe feet and their pickaxe snouts. They are lean, long-legged pigs with pockets all over, fat pocket ears ahead and fat pocket tails behind, and the pockets full of rusty dust. They dip their noses in their pockets, sniff their noses full of rusty dust, and sneeze the rusty dust in each other's wrinkly, wriggly, raggly faces. I took out a buzz shovel and scraper, pushed on the buzzer, and watched it dig and scrape out a city. The houses came to my ankles, the factories came to my knees. The top of the roof of the highest skyscraper came up to my nose. A spider ran out of a cellar. A book fell out of his mouth. It broke into rusty dust when I took hold of it. One page I saved. The reading on it said millions of people had read the book, and millions more would read it. Hoomslimmer reached into a pocket. He took out in his hand a railroad train with an engine hooked on ahead, and a smoking car, coaches and sleeping cars hooked on behind. "I cleaned it nice for you, Peter," he said, "but the pickaxe pigs sneezed rusty dust on it. Put it in your handkerchief." "And now," he went on, "I will rap off the wrappers on the skyscraper. Look at it. It is 30 stories high. On top is a flagpole for a flag to go up. Halfway down is a clock, with the hands gone. On the first floor is a restaurant with signs, "Watch your hats and overcoats." Here's the office of the building, with a sign on the wall, "Be brief." Here the elevators ran up and down in a hurry. On doors are signs, bankers, doctors, lawyers, life insurance, fire insurance, steam hoist and operating engineers, bridge and structural iron and steel construction engineers, stocks, bonds, securities, architects, writers, detectives, window cleaners, jewelry, diamonds, cloaks, suits, shirts, socks, silk, wool, cotton, lumber, brick, sand, corn, oats, wheat, paper, ink, pencils, knives, guns, land, oil, coal. One door with a big sign, "We buy and sell." Anything, another door, we fix anything, and more doors, none such, the world's finest, the best in the world, oldest establishment in the world, and Hoomslimmer put his arms around the skyscraper, lifted it on his shoulder, and carried it upstairs where Peter Potato Blossom said to put it, in a corner of her sleeping room. And she took out of her handkerchief the railroad train with the engine hooked on ahead and the smoking car, coaches and sleeping cars hooked on behind. And she put the railroad train just next to the bottom floor of the skyscraper so people on the train could step off the train and step right into the skyscraper. Little railroad trains and little skyscrapers are just as big for little people as big railroad trains and big skyscrapers are for big people. Is it not such? She asked Hoomslimmer. And for an answer he gave her a looking-glass half as long as her little finger and said, "The women in that skyscraper used to look at themselves from head to foot in that looking-glass." Then Peter sang out like a spring bird song, "Now we are going to forget the pickaxe pigs sneezing rusty dust, and the Pig's Eye Valley and the Pickaxe Mountains. We're going out where the by-low is whistling his by-low and by-low again, where it is spring in the tall timbers and over the soft black lands, where the hoo-hoo and the biddy-widdies come north to make a home again, and the booblow blossoms put their cool white lips out into the blue mist. And they sat under a tree where the early green of spring crooned in the black branches, and they could hear Hannah, Hannah More, and Susquehanna whispering yes, yes, no, no, and a hesitating stutter halfway between yes, yes, and no, no, always hesitating. 10. 3 stories about the letter X and how it got into the alphabet. People, an oyster king, chevaliers, pig wisps, the men who change the alphabets, a river lumber king, kiss me flax eyes, wildcats, a rich man, blue silver her playmates singing. There are 600 different stories told in the Rootabaga Country about the first time the letter X got into the alphabet and how and why it was. The author has chosen three of the shortest and strangest of those stories, and they are told in the next and following pages. Pig wisps. There was an oyster king far in the south who knew how to open oysters and pick out the pearls. He grew rich, and all kinds of money came rolling in on him because he was a great oyster opener and knew how to pick out the pearls. The son of this oyster king was named Shovel-Ears, and it was hard for him to remember. "He knows how to open oysters, but he forgets to pick out the pearls," said the father of Shovel-Ears. "He is learning to remember worse and worse, and to forget better and better," said the father of Shovel-Ears. Now in that same place far in the south was a little girl with 2 braids of hair twisted down her back and a face saying, "Here we come. Where from?" And her mother called her Pigwisps. Twice a week, Pigwisps ran to the butcher shop for a soup bone. Before starting, she crossed her fingers, and then the whole way to the butcher shop kept her fingers crossed. If she met any playmates and they asked her to stop and play cross tag or jackstones or all around, the mulberry bush or the green grass grew all around, or drop the handkerchief, she told them, "My fingers are crossed and I am running to the butcher shop for a soup bone." One morning, running to the butcher shop, she bumped into a big queer boy and bumped him flat on the sidewalk. "Did you look where you were running?" she asked him. "I forgot again," said Shovel-Ears. "I remember worse and worse. I forget better and better." "Cross your fingers like this," said Pigwisps, showing him how. He ran to the butcher shop with her, watching her keep her fingers crossed till the butcher gave her the soup bone. "After I get it then, the soup bone reminds me to go home with it," she told him. "But until I get the soup bone, I keep my fingers crossed." Shovel-Ears went to his father and began helping his father open oysters, and Shovel-Ears kept his fingers crossed to remind him to pick out the pearls. He picked 100 buckets of pearls the first day and brought his father the longest, slippery, shining rope of pearls ever seen in that oyster country. "How do you do it?" his father asked. "It is the crossed fingers, like this," said Shovel-Ears, crossing his fingers like the letter X. "This is the way to remember better and forget worse." It was then the Oyster King went and told the men who changed the alphabets just what happened. When the men who changed the alphabets heard just what happened, they decided to put in a new letter, the letter X, near the end of the alphabet, the sign of the crossed fingers. On the wedding day of Pigwisps and Shovel-Ears, the men who changed the alphabets all came to the wedding with their fingers crossed. Pigwisps and Shovel-Ears stood up to be married. They crossed their fingers. They told each other they would remember their promises. And Pigwisps had 2 ropes of pearls twisted down her back and a sweet young face saying, "Here we come. Where from? Kiss me." Many years ago, when pigs climbed chimneys and chased cats up into the trees, away back, so they say, there was a lumber king who lived in a river city with many wildcats in the timbers nearby. And the lumber king said, "I am losing my hair and my teeth, and I am tired of many things. My only joy is a daughter who is a dancing shaft of light on the axe handles of morning." She was quick and wild, the lumber king's daughter. She had never kissed. Not her mother nor father nor any sweetheart ever had a love print from her lips. Proud she was. They called her Kiss Me. She didn't like that name, Kiss Me. They never called her that when she was listening. If she happened to be listening, they called her Find Me, Lose Me, Get Me. They never mentioned kisses because they knew she would run away and be what her father called her, a dancing shaft of light on the axe handles of morning. But when she was not listening, they asked, "Where is Kiss Me today?" Or they would say, "Every morning Kiss Me gets more beautiful. I wonder if she will ever in her young life get a kiss from a man good enough to kiss her." One day Kiss Me was lost. She went out on a horse with a gun to hunt wildcats in the timbers nearby. Since the day before, she was gone. All night she was out in a snowstorm with a horse and a gun hunting wildcats. And the storm of the blowing snow was coming worse on thee. It was then the lumber king called in a long, loose young man with a leather face and hay in his hair. And the king said, "Flax Eyes, you are the laziest, careless man in the river lumber country. Go out in the snowstorm now among the wildcats where Kiss Me is fighting for her life, and save her. I am the hero. I am the man who knows how. I am the man who has been waiting for this chance," said Flax Eyes. On a horse with a gun, out into the snowstorm, Flax Eyes rode that day. Far, far away he rode to where Kiss Me, the quick, wild Kiss Me, was standing with her back against a big rock fighting off the wildcats. In that country, the snowstorms make the wildcats wilder, And Kiss Me was tired of shooting wildcats, tired of fighting in the snow, nearly ready to give up and let the wildcats have her. Then Flax Eyes came. The wildcats jumped at him, and he threw them off. More wildcats came, jumping straight at his face. He took hold of those wildcats by the necks and threw them over the big rock, up into the trees, away into the snow and the wind. At last he took all the wildcats one by one and threw them so far they couldn't come back. He put Kiss Me on her horse, rode back to the Lumber King, and said, lazy and careless, "This is us." The Lumber King saw the face of Flax Eyes was all covered with cross marks like the letter X. And the Lumber King saw the wildcats had torn the shirt off Flax Eyes, and on the skin of his chest, shoulders, arms were the cross marks of the wildcat's claws, cross marks like the letter X. So the king went to the men who changed the alphabets, and they put the cross marks of the wildcat's claws for a new letter, the letter X, near the end of the alphabet. And at the wedding of Kiss Me and Flax Eyes, the men who changed the alphabets came with wildcat claws crossed like the letter X, blue silver. Long ago, when the years were dark and the black rains used to come with strong winds and blow the front porches off houses and pick chimneys off houses and blow them onto other houses, long ago, when people had understanding about rain and wind, there was a rich man with a daughter he loved better than anything else in the world. And one night, when the black rain came with a strong wind blowing off front porches and picking off chimneys, the daughter of the rich man fell asleep into a deep sleep. In the morning they couldn't wake her. The black rain with the strong wind kept up all that day while she kept on sleeping in a deep sleep. Men and women with music and flowers came in, boys and girls, her playmates came in, singing songs and calling her name. And she went on sleeping. All the time her arms were crossed on her breast, the left arm crossing the right arm like a letter X. 2 days more, 5 days, 6, 7 days went by, and all the time the black rain with a strong wind blowing, and the daughter of the rich man never woke up to listen to the music, nor to smell the flowers, nor to hear her playmates singing songs and calling her name. She stayed sleeping in a deep sleep, with her arms crossed on her breast, the left arm crossing the right arm like a letter X. So they made a long silver box, just long enough to reach from her head to her feet, and they put on her a blue-silver dress and a blue-silver band around her forehead and blue-silver shoes on her feet. There were soft blue silk and silver sleeves to cover her left arm and her right arm, the two arms crossed on her breast like the letter X. They took the silver box and carried it to a corner of the garden where she used to go to look at blue lilacs and climbing blue morning glories in patches of silver lights. Among the old leaves of blue lilacs and morning glories they dug a place for the silver box to be laid in. And men and women with music and flowers stood by the silver box, and her old playmates, singing songs she used to sing, and calling her name. When it was all over and they all went away, they remembered one thing most of all, and that was her arms in the soft silk and blue silver sleeves, the left arm crossing over the right arm like the letter X. Somebody went to the king of the country and told him how it all happened, how the black rains with a strong wind came, the deep sleep, the singing playmates, the silver box, and the soft silk and blue silver sleeves on the left arm crossing the right arm like the letter X. Before that, there never was a letter X in the alphabet. It was then the king said, "We shall put the crossed arms in the alphabet. We shall have a new letter called X, so everybody will understand a funeral is beautiful if there are young singing playmates."